A belated happy May the 4th. May the 4th be with you to all of you that are tuning in right now. I didn't get a chance to do it on Sunday because it was a kind of a comic book video and I had to pre-film that one. So I want to say happy May 4th to everybody, a little bit late. And to kind of celebrate that, we've got to go through the May the 4th auction that closed a few hours ago. I'm filming this on Sunday, May the 4th. Over at Heritage Auctions, there were some incredible items that sold, some stuff that I had never seen before, some rare prototypes. The prices overall did not disappoint. There are some that sold for below what I expected. There are some where I had zero expectations just because I had no idea what the market is going to bear. I would personally, this is my personal opinion, I think that the window was slightly missed for a lot of these items, that I think they would have gone for a lot more money in a better market environment. I feel like the market environment is down a little bit right now. There's some uncertainty, kind of macroeconomically speaking, with where the economy is, that I think that maybe, just maybe, some of these would have probably garnered even higher prices than where they did. That's not to say that the prices were bad. The prices were very, very strong, as you would expect for a lot of these very rare items. So I've got a ton to go through, so let's go ahead and dig in. I forgot. I do need to say thanks to a few Patreon members. First, Cameron Smith recently increased his Patreon membership amount. Thank you, Cameron, for the very generous increase in your Patreon. And then I've got two new Patreon members I need to give a shout out to, Luke and Joel Lee. Thank you both. And Cameron especially, you were very, very generous with your recent upgrade to your Patreon amount. So I just want to make sure to give a shout out to all three of you and to all of my Patreon supporters. You guys are the reason why this channel is what it is today. All right, let's take a look. We've got some pretty incredible items that sold. Here was kind of my watch list. It was basically everything. The first one is the Boba Fett first shot figure, AFA 85 Pop 1. And it was Pop 1 because, of the label. So keep that in mind, that there's no other first shot prototype labeled peach head and limbs black torso. So obviously there are first shot prototype Boba Fett's, but this is the only one that has peach colored limbs and head and then the black torso. AFA 85. It sold for $40,000. To me, I'm not saying that it's worth what a rocket firing prototype is worth. Obviously those are worth way more money. But 40 to me feels like a borderline steal. I don't know. I mean, again, I don't know this market very well, but when you start looking at what some of these other prototypes went for in this auction, and what other kind of, rocket firing Fetts, they typically can go for 100, 150, 200, depending on which, if it's the L slot or the J slot, hand painted, all those kind of factors play a role in the final sales price. But to me, for an AFA 85, to have the only one with the peach limbs and the black torso, it does look really cool. There's something really awesome about having these alternate kind of colors, and to have a one of one. And just what I see first shot prototypes go for the first 12 figures like Leia and Luke and things like that, we've seen some big prices in recent Hakes auctions that, to me anyway, I feel like this number is a good number. And I think whenever this hits the market again in 5 or 10 or 20 years time, they're going to do pretty well on that. That's my guess. Again, you're not talking to somebody that knows this market very well, but first shot peach head prototype. So it's a head pull, only an AFA 40 peach first shot head. That number for 81.25, that number feels big to me relative to what this AFA 85, the full figure is a first shot prototype versus the head. And, I'm not trying to compare my first shot head pull clear head Lobot to this because it's not comparable. Obviously, it's Lobot. No one cares about Lobot except for me because I have the same hairstyle. But my first shot head, I couldn't give it away at $550, $575, and it was an AFA qualified 85. Now, is it worth more than that? Of course, but I don't think it's worth 81.25. Not in this condition at a a 40 grade. So that's my personal opinion on that. If you're gonna spend this kind of money, I would rather have one of these other first shots that we're going to look at here in a little bit versus the Fett. But it is Fett, and any pre-production Boba Fett is going to have the Boba Fett tax. So I get it, but that one feels like an overpay. This one feels like an underpay to me. Again, we're talking big boy money, way bigger than anything I would spend. So here is a Peach first shot head pull for Obi-Wan Kenobi. And this is a good comparison, right? So this one is an AFA 80, Pop 1, sold for $32.50. Is the Boba Fett, AFA 40 worth, let's call it $5,000 more? For me, it would not. For me, it would not. I'd rather have the Obi-Wan Kenobi. At $32.50. That number makes more sense to me, but it also is not as exciting, right? You have basically what looks like an unpainted head, so it's not particularly exciting relative to this one, which really pops. So there's and obviously Boba Fett versus Kenobi, but to me, I'd rather have the Kenobi at that price. Likewise, I'm not terribly surprised by this number here. Pretty much any first shot prototype, Empire Strikes Back figure, anything from the ESB line, they are very, very expensive for first shot prototypes. 15,000 was even higher than I was probably expecting. We did see the IG-88s in the last Hake Shot auction, the first shot prototype IG-88s that went for big money. This one did sell at 15,000. Black torso, white arms, peach head, AFA 80 plus. $15,000. It's not a number I'd pay, but I get why, because you've got a lot of different colors going on there. It's one of the main heroes, and it is an ESB first shot, so they do tend to be more expensive. Pop 1 for Princess Leia Endor. This was a first shot prototype Leia Endor, light brown hair as it was labeled, and that was Pop 1. AFA 80 6562. And then we had the B-Wing pilot, first shot prototype 3750. That one's kind of cool because I like the face on that one. It's kind of a very pale face. It's almost like unpainted there. And the Nikto sold for $57.50. The Han Endor AFA 80 Pop 1 sold for $61.25. And again, I'm sure there are other first shot prototypes, but it's just because of the label saying dark brown hair. So maybe some of the other first shots don't have the dark brown hair. They have either the standard kind of what was finalized as the final color or some other kind of color scheme. But this one, all of those sold for pretty big money. The AT-ST driver sold for $31.25, Pop 4 on that one. This one didn't have any kind of label there. So, Pop 4 for the first shot prototype AT-ST driver, $31.25. So there were a lot of big numbers on the first shot prototypes. None of them really stood out to me as drastic overpays other than maybe this one. But even that, it's like, it is a Boba Fett. So I get why people paid that number. But the rest of maybe this one, maybe the Han Bespin was a little high. That again, I get why somebody was willing to go to that number. And in all fairness, like I've mentioned, pretty much any ESB prototype, it's like $10,000 plus. You very rarely see them sell for less than that. I've seen a few on like the Facebook groups go like, in a private transaction, no transaction fees type thing. You're not paying consignment fees or taxes and anything like that. So I do see some that can go for below 10. But in general, they do tend to go for over $10,000. Pretty much any of them. It's crazy. All right, now to the big items. We got to talk about these. So we talked briefly in the preview about these. So this was a very unique item. This was a Kenner Canada Qualified 70 Plus 12-pack. So it included all of these mint on cards inside this box, and it was graded all encased together. So all the mint on cards are inside, but they did show them prior to grading what they look like. And I had no idea what it would sell for. It did sell for a big number at $38,126. Again, the first time I've ever even seen this before. I didn't even know it existed. It's not like I troll the SWCA archives to find this stuff. I'm sure that it's on there, but it's a pretty incredible item, and you can just see some of the cool box art for a very, very unique item that is just a pure piece of survivor, it's a credit to the owner, whoever owned this, to have it all, to have this, because it must not have been very prevalent, given how, that this is the only one that's been graded by AFA. So $38,000. And then the other one that was probably from the same consignor was a 9-figure multi-pack that was also a Kenner Canada. What is it with Kenner Canada and all the kind of weird stuff? You have the shrink wrap Sears exclusive figures, and you have these. It does seem like Kenner Canada did some pretty wonky things. They had those transition cards, right, where the ESB cards were slapped with the Return of the Jedi sticker on them. Those are very desirable. That's another Kenner Canada product. It does seem like Kenner Canada and obviously the Power of the Force Yak Face. That's a Kenner Canada item. I mean, there's a lot of very expensive Kenner Canada items out there, and this is certainly the coup de grace. No pun intended with my terrible French. $33,750 on that one. So somebody probably bought both of them. I mean, let's be real here. Somebody who had to have them in their collection probably dropped 70 grand on those. But very, very cool. And all these numbers, by the way, include the buyer's premium. And then we got, some more standard items, again, with prices that really shocked me. I mean, AFA 85 Greedo punched example too, with a price sticker, and it still sold for $32.50, which is well above fair market value. Well above fair market value. So, and that does tend to happen, right? Very high grades. You get these auctions where the bidding is fast and furious, that people, will just throw some crazy bids out there. But $32.50 for a 21A Greedo. I'm not trying to say it's not worth a lot of money. It's just probably at least a $2,000 item, right? But it is punched with a price sticker, and $32.50 after the buyer's premium is significantly over market. Likewise, the 21 back B Snaggletooth unpunched with a price sticker. That one sold for $31.25. Gulp. Those numbers are well above fair market value, in my opinion. Here was an interesting one. This is a very, very tough item to find. This is a Transition ESB Stormtrooper, the 21 back Transition ESB. This is Pop 1, highest grade. It's just a very, very rare character for this particular card back, and it was graded AFA 85. $46.25 on that one. I'm not terribly shocked by that. I had no idea what it would sell for, but I was certainly thinking at least $2 grand, but $46.25 is a big, big number. So props there. This was another interesting one. This was a Return of the Jedi 45 back Palatoy, but it had the figure stand inside. So most of these obviously were not packed with those little figure stands that you see here. And you can see there, they labeled it as such because most of them are just a plain blister. So not a Toy Tony, packed with the blister. I assume it's not a Toy Tony. AFA 70, and that one sold for $38.75. So pretty wild there. Pretty wild price given the 70 grade, but somebody wanted the rarity factor, Pop 1 with that figure stand inside. Some other more common items, Land of the Jawas qualified 80s for $16.25. That's probably not too far off of fair market value, if not right on it. We had a no LP logo AFA 75 X-Wing. That one sold for $37.50. Big number there, but again, it is an early X-Wing. Probably more than I would spend. I was thinking like $2,500 for a 75 grade, but I get it. The Rebel Armored Snowspeeder with the pink background. We just saw one of these that sold, I believe, at Hakes for huge money. It was an AFA 85. I think it was part of Jeff's collection, and that sold for 5 figures. It was into the $10,000 plus range. So this AFA 75 went for $4,000. Not a bad consolation prize if you were bidding on that 85 and you wanted this 75. You saved yourself probably about 10 grand. But those are always very desirable with that pink background. Quite a few more to go through, but there were some overpays like this AFA 85 Collector Series Land Speeder. I mean, we see these all the time on eBay, and they don't typically even approach $1,000. But that one sold for $1437.50. The Y-Wing Fighter sold for $1375. We have seen some big numbers, and I think it was Shane or Some of you other guys that watch the channel that mentioned that the Y-wing and the B-wing can be tough to find, factory sealed and high grade. So the Y-wing sold for $13.75, the B-wing sold for $12.50. And then this one I actually thought was a pretty good deal. This is the TIE Interceptor AFA 75. That sold for $9.37, which to me, I know it's a 75 grade, but it is the TIE Interceptor, and I have certainly seen higher. I mean, I've seen factory sealed TIE Interceptors ungraded go for that kind of price. So I thought 937 was a great deal on that one. The Imperial Shuttle, again, a very fair price for an AFA 80 plus sealed example. That one sold for $21.25. We've seen much higher numbers than that, even on Facebook. So $21.25 feels like a very fair number there. Now we get on to some of the oddities. We had the plush set, the Ewok plush set, including some baggies. Those sold for $1031.25. And the art was where I was really wanting to see where they'd go. So this was a Droids promotional illustration by Alice Carter. And so it was just kind of to promote the Droids cartoon. And all of the original art sold for huge money. So this one sold for $10,000. This is the original card art for the Droids C-3PO. So this is the art, the original art used to make those card backs, and it sold for $30,000. I knew it was going to be a big number, but very cool. So, you know, obviously it was from this card back, but you're getting the original art by the artist. That is a piece of collecting history, and you know, if I was independently wealthy, I would have no trouble spending 30 grand on that. Absolutely no trouble. That would be an awesome item. They also had it for Kez Ebon. That one went for a lot less. $18,750, as you'd expect, but that's still a big number. I mean, we've seen some other card art. It was either Heritage or Golden, I can't remember. It might have been even Hakes, but you know, there was some other original card art that that sold in the 10 to 12 range. But you know, these original card art, I think those were proofs. These are actually the original art, which would make sense as to why they're more expensive. But $18,750, and then finally, here is that arcade set that I showed in the preview. It sold for $410, or with the buyer's premium, $512.50. It says, actually, it's still going. Never mind. This one says it's still going. Current bid. I don't know when this one ends. When does this one end? It says, it ends today. So this one hasn't ended yet, apparently. But it's still at $512.50 after the buyer's premium. I don't know if people are still arguing or bidding on it or what, but that number seems really low to me. I'm really tempted to throw in a bid on this, but if this got delivered to my house, there would be no trial separation. There wouldn't even be a divorce. It would be straight to homicide. So I'm not going to bid on it. Anyway, that's all I really had for this video. Thank you, as always, for watching. I'll be back soon.